Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of the Tapped In podcast, the only podcast where 1 + 1 + 1 = 7. I'm your host, Morgan Booksh.
And I am your other host, Thomas Lowry, the power plant of the group.
And I'm Simon Basic Forest Aleksander.
Wait a second, we're missing one here. Oh yeah, that's because we've got our trusty Tron player, Giovanni Mera on the episode. Giovanni Urza's Tower Mera, as they call you, huh?
Yeah, it's a Tron flex, man. The Tron flex.
Tron flex, that's right. Liberate yourself. So today we have a lot planned. We're gonna do a deep dive into how to play Tron with a player who's been playing it for years and who's recently seen some success at an SCG Regional. Mm-hmm. And then after that, we're just going to do a little bit of a dip into some of the new UMA spoilers with sort of a more in-depth look coming in next week's podcast. But first, we wanted to give you guys a little bit of an introduction about who we are as a podcast. Here in this second episode, we have all three hosts, myself, Morgan, Tom, and Simon here. And we just wanted to give you guys a little bit of information about who we are and how we got started playing Magic. So I guess I'll go ahead and start off. My name is Morgan, and I've been playing Magic for about 3 years now. In fact, Giovanni was one of the first people I met in the community that sort of, gave me my sea legs, as it were, and sort of helped me understand how to become a better player and level up. I play a lot of Draft. That's how I got my start. I play a lot of Standard because I'm sponsored and I can afford to rent decks and don't have to buy them over and over again.
God bless you.
Yeah. And, I do play a little bit of Modern at big events, but certainly not as much as our other two hosts. So that's a little bit about me.
And as for myself, Thomas Lowry, I started playing Magic as a kid, not very competitively. I think I opened packs around like Onslaught and Legions or whatnot, but never played in tournaments at the time. I got out of Magic and then jumped back in around Khans of Tarkir. I actually did a draft with our other host, Simon, and a good friend of ours, Chad. And I was lucky enough to open a Sorin the Solemn Visitor. It was like my first pack that I opened as an adult. Nice. And I feel like opening a good Planeswalker when you're like new to the game, it's an exciting pool that everyone else at the table goes, oh my gosh! Really helped me get back into the game. So mostly I just play Modern. About usually like 3 nights a week. I guess I'm a pretty consistent grinder here in the local scene. And part of my Magic endeavors has been actually to start a YouTube channel, MTG Tournament Grinder. And so, yeah, I try to just have a lot of fun playing Magic and making sweet videos for you guys.
So I'm Simon. I started playing Magic about 6 years ago. Like Morgan, I started off playing Limited, played a bunch of drafts. I started when Theros came out, would do a bunch of drafts down at Dragon's Lair. And I branched out into Commander, really casual. But I started to get more and more competitive. I built a Perforos Commander deck that all my friends hated. From there, Tom and I started to get more into Modern, and now we both play at Pat's pretty frequently, and we're both doing pretty well. I typically play Death Shadow, Burn.
Recently started moving into Hollow One, right?
Yeah, I just bought Hollow One.
Exciting.
So, yeah, really excited about that one.
Yeah, just in time for the new Phoenix decks. You're just back to the old Phoenix,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So without further ado, we'd like to get started and have a little talk about Mono Green Tron. So welcome to the Play Like a Pro segment of the Tapped In podcast. This is sort of a segment where we talk with a player who's recently had some success piloting a certain Modern deck and really get to the bottom of not just what it means to, make the right decisions turn by turn and sequence correctly with the deck, but we really get into the nitty-gritty about what the deck is trying to do, what the identity of the deck is, and sort of those next level tips that you can only really get by either playing the deck a lot or learning from someone who does play the deck a lot. So I'd like to introduce the featured player this week, talking about Mono Green Tron, hot off of a top 8 of the SCG Regionals tournament in Dallas, qualifying him for an invitational bout. So congratulations that. We have Giovanni Mera. Welcome, Giovanni.
Hey, how you guys doing? Good to be here, man. Thank you.
Yeah, we're doing great. So Giovanni, you've played Tron for quite a while. How many years do you have on this deck?
Honestly, I think I picked this deck up about a year and a half ago when it was originally Green-Red Tron, and I played Grove of the Burn Willows, and this was still actually maybe a little bit 2016 when Splinterton was still in the format.
Oh, wow.
That's when I played Tron.
That's when I was actually first learning Modern, and Splinterton gave me sort of a rude introduction to the format. But I imagine Tron does that for a lot of people, too.
It was still the menacing. Well, that's when we had Ayavugan.
Oh, God. Oh, God. I had blocked it out of my memory.
Eldrazi Winter.
That's right.
Oh, no, it was before. Look, Ayavugan, that Green-Red Tron list died because of the sins of Carolus Eldrazi. So
it's worth mentioning, too, that like after Ayavugan's gone, there aren't a lot of decks that remain from that, faded Pro Tour. But Mono Green Tron is probably one of them, right?
Yeah, that has a lot to do with the innate power of the Tron lands themselves, which there's always been a big discussion as to whether or not these should even be in the format. But, when you have a core of a deck that's so dedicated to powering out and getting this 3-land combo out, yeah, it makes it to be very resilient.
Wonderful. So it's clear that you've spent around 4 years on this archetype. You've really gotten to know it pretty intimately. I know recently, in terms of your top finishes, I had the pleasure of being on a team with you in SCG Dallas earlier this year. I was happy about our performance. Sometimes team events just line up poorly for all 3 matchups, so we didn't make it to day 2, but we had pretty good records.
We did.
And both of us did pretty well in the open events that we played the next day.
Yes.
I think you finished, what was it?
18th.
18th in the Modern Classic?
Yeah.
Wow, nice.
About 120 person tournament.
Yeah. That weekend, I think you and I both went respectively. Well, we did really well. We had 7 and 2.
Yeah, absolutely.
And had I not punted in one game with missing one of the Valakits from the surgical extraction, the deck would have gone 8 and 1. And it's also really important to highlight, when a deck is so powerful that you can mess up like that. The deck is just that powerful; it can bail you out sometimes.
There's sort of a fallback plan there.
Yeah.
That's nice to know. Good reason to play the deck, certainly. And then, of course, more recently, like we mentioned, you did top 8 the SCG Dallas Regionals, which are happening the same weekend as the Pro Tour, qualifying you to the SCG Invitational. So congratulations on that.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah, it was a top 4 with the final start the day with Tron, and then I ended my run playing against another Tron deck. So that particular Tron player, Corey, he took it down.
Well done, Corey. Well done, Corey.
Yeah.
So the guy that took you down in the top 8 ended up getting first place?
Yeah, well, he did, and nice. The bracket was, it was pretty favorable for him. I think we saw Green-Black mid-range be the deck that he would have to play against, and that it doesn't matter how many Assassin's trophies you have. You can fight through those just fine.
Gotcha.
If I had a deck with Damping Sphere, Assassin's Trophy, Alpine Moon, and Blood Moon, I still might get beat by Tron, is what you're saying.
You have to clock it. Yeah, you have to clock us.
All right, so let's dive right into a sort of getting to know, not just like the cards in the deck, but the identity of the deck. We'll get to the full deck list in depth as well here in this section. But here's what I'm wondering. For this deck, a lot of people like to meme around about Tron.
Yeah, of course.
1 + 1 + 1 = 7. Oh, turn 3 Karn. Wow.
Yeah.
F Tron.
It's true.
What was it, Tom? Tron players only want one thing.
And it's disgusting.
I have another one. So Tron player walks into a bar, right? He asks for a beer. The bartender says, "That'll be $6." The Tron player lays down 3 $1 bills and says, "Keep the change."
That's true. Yeah.
Nice.
But when you realize that the deck is almost a meme, it's been around since the inception of Modern.
Yeah, there's a reason it's a meme.
Yeah,
and that's what we want to get into today. Is we want to sort of, I feel like a lot of players just sort of when they sit down against Tron, they just sort of lose all rational thought. And they're like, "Oh, great, I'm playing against Tron again." But I want to get to the bottom of why this deck is so powerful, why it's meme worthy, and what it's really trying to do. So the first question I have for you is, what is the identity of this deck in Modern? What is its game plan? What is it trying to do?
Well, first and foremost, it is trying to get Urza's Power Plant, Urza's Tower, and Urza's Mine into play by turn 3 or 4 at the latest, and trying to skip from its turn 3 to possibly being a turn 7 for you, right? And that gives you access to things like Karn Liberated, gives you access to now Walking Ballista, Worm Coil Engine, You can drop an O-Stone on turn 4 and activate it. You can play the O-Stone out and put the Fear of God, and then when you're going, well, if I overcommit to this board, I'm going to get blown out of the water by this O-Stone. So, in a nutshell, it's looking to assemble pieces so that you can have the best possible turn 3 play available to you in Modern, which would be like a Karn Liberated.
So, one of the things I found, like, playing Magic for a while is, like, cards like Rampant Growth, right? Really good cards, generally in, like, the standard formats that they're in the limited formats that they're in. When you think about it, like, Rampant Growth is basically setting up for a turn 3 with access to 4 mana. And so sort of what you're getting at is that, like, fundamentally, if we understand that card, a 2 mana play is powerful.
Yes.
Then, like, think of that, multiplied to the Tron level, so where you're setting up for a turn 3 with access to 7 mana.
Yes, and that is probably one of the biggest complaints when people play against it. They go, "Well, I just missed my 3rd land drop," and the Tron player is going to 7. Right? That not only do you get the chance to play the card and then decide, am I going to minus here? Am I going to uptick? What's the best way to bury my opponent? But every card in the deck represents a value of sometimes a 2-for-1. In other ways, like Ulamog can be a 3-for-1. So
Ugin can be a 9-for-1.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the last question I have for you before we dive into the deck list itself and what the cards are doing is, like, in Magic metagames, we can sort of have the idea of, like, okay, this is a control deck, this is an aggro deck, this is a tempo aggro deck, this is a combo deck. Like, where do you think that Tron falls in that pie, like, as a Tron player?
Man, there was not too long ago, it was Paulo was talking about this deck.
Paulo Vitor Dom de Rosa.
Yeah, Brasileño, man, very, very good. We all know who he is. He's fantastic. He was trying to say, is this a ramp deck? Is this a combo deck? Is this a control deck? When you define a combo deck, it is seeking to assemble certain game plan, right? So you can describe the opening turns of Tron as assembling a game plan. And that is, you're going to play out a chromatic sphere, you're going to play out a star or an expedition map, and try to find that 2nd or 3rd Tron piece by turn 3. Once that happens, the game doesn't really end, right? But in a lot of ways, depending on what you're playing against, you might be that far ahead that the game is about to end in about 4 or 5 turns.
Right.
So I would describe it as a ramp control deck.
Ramp control, because control decks seek to sort of, like, answer the board state that you have, and looking at the list that Tron has and the tools you have available, there are a lot of different board states and plans that this deck can attack. Yeah,
and you're looking at it correctly. Each card or each payoff card answers the board in a particular way, and knowing which one you need and the spot that you're in will really help you leverage your position.
Awesome. So, combo control. That's the verdict on the archetype that Tron fits into.
As far as the cards themselves, I figured we could go through them one by one and kind of break down the importance of each individual card.
Sure.
Let's start with the creatures. The one that strikes me as the most Tron-esque creature has to be Wormcoil Engine.
Yeah.
So, why don't you walk me through Wormcoil Engine? It is a 7-cost.
6 cost.
Excuse me.
So, Wormcoil Engine is a 6-drop that has Death Touch and Lifelink. And when it dies, it creates 3/3 and another 3/3 with Lifelink, and the other one has Death Touch, right? What that card does for you on turn 3, it stabilizes you. It says, here's my blocker. I'm going to gain 6 life. I'm going to most likely force you to not attack, or we're going to trade somehow. And I'm still going to accrue value from it because next turn I still have 6 power on board to block again. So a lot of decks look at that card, and if you're an aggro deck, say like Burn, that is really like one card you don't want to see on turn 3. Even if you're on the play, you go, well, do I have the Skullcrack for this thing, or how do I get around it? Usually they get around it by having bolted you so hard that you're like, okay, you're at 3 anyway, you're at 6, bolt you, you're dead. And that happens. That's fine.
Right.
But in a lot of other matchups, say against Jund, or so against green-black mid-range, they look at that card and they go, I can't Lily that thing. I can't push that thing. I can terminate it, or I can call against command it, and it's all bad.
Right. There is no good answer to a big 6/6 with lifelink and Death Touch.
The best answer is Path. Path to Exile, or a Reflector Mage. I think the spots where this card is good in will be in those mid-range decks and against those aggro decks. The spot where this card is worst in will be against the tempo decks.
Well, you have your creature package. You have your package that helps you assemble Tron. Why don't you kind of help me break it down a little bit into the different facets of the deck?
All right, I'll preface that by saying that Tron can be considered a 40-card deck, right? So what we have is Ancient Stirrings to be
Better than any draft deck I've ever played.
Yeah, this kind of thing in draft would be completely unfair, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's still unfair and constructed, right? So we have 4 Ancient Stirrings, 4 Chromatic Stars. Be very aware that the Chromatic Star, upon hitting the graveyard, will draw you a card, which is why KCI also plays it, and this is why they don't play Sphere. Sphere requires an activation for you to actually get the...
KCI plays Stirrings too, right?
They play Stirrings and Star.
Stirrings and Star, okay.
Yeah. This tends to be a very good sort of like cantrip engine for these colorless-based decks. Then you have 4 Expedition maps. My list runs 3 Relic of Regenerate to hedge against the graveyard decks. Relic, again, also cycles. Cantrips, and you want to think of it that way. We have 4, 8, 12, 16, 17, 18, 19 cards that draw you a card. That's a lot.
That's a lot.
Then you have Sylvan Scrying, which is one of the best ways to fetch out your third Tron piece, or maybe get a flex slot.
Whichever Tron land you don't already have.
Yeah, sometimes it's really good to get the Stirrings and get your Sanctum if you already have Tron in hand, or a lot of times you need to get value off of your green sources, so you're going to grab a forest. I need that one forest right now to unlock my Stirrings and unlock some of these other plays.
Buy a Ghost Quarter over there too and grab that, right?
Yeah, sometimes you can do that. That's really good against Inkmoth Nexus, right?
Or the Mirror.
Yeah, we'll talk about my little sideboard plan there, which didn't work in top 8 because I drew air. But yeah, so we have the 4 Scrying, then we have 3 O Stones. This particular card in general, I think, is there have been some lists that I've seen lately running only 3. It's too valuable against so many things that you really need it to be good against in game 1, and it translates to being across the format. You need this board wipe to catch you up, because essentially on turns 1, 2, and 3 you're taking turns off. Right. Then you get to your actual payoffs, right? I play 4 Karn, 2 Ugin the Spirit Dragon. What was that one they said? Karn the Spirit Dragon.
We had a buddy who named Karn the Spirit Dragon off Meddling Mage. Fortunately, cards that don't exist he cannot name, so he did get to reroll.
We were all like crowded around that PPTQ going, Karn? Really? Okay. Then 2 Ulamogs. I'll tell you, Ulamog ends a lot of games.
Oh, no, I know. He's ceaselessly hungry for ending games.
I play... So... For all of last season, I was on 3 Walking Ballistas. I've pivoted to cutting the 3rd Walking Ballista for 2 in the list in favor of the 3rd Relic. I play 3 Worm Coil Engines, and then I play the 1 World Breaker. I think a lot of people don't value World Breaker. I played a lot of Green-Red Ramp in Standard during Battle for Zendikar, where I played 4 World Breaker and 4 Ulamog. The cast triggers are just huge in certain matchups. Right, especially against decks like Blue White Control, where you really need to get that value off of the creature, and the cast trigger matters. And then my sideboard is 3 Thought Knot Seer, 4 Nature's Claims. I'm very adamant about the 4. You can go to 3. I just think that 4 is really correct right now, because everybody's bringing in some kind of form of, like what is that called? The Stony Silent Dampening Sphere. Oof, that one is actually harder to beat than Bloodman. Spatial Contortions as a 2 of 1 Warping Whale. I think Warping Whale has a lot of flexibility for what it does. I consider it the Eldrazi charm. 3 Thrag Tusk, and 2 Surgical Extraction. My list played this a lot because of decks like Storm and KCI, though right now it could also just be like Grafdigger's Cage.
Okay.
Right. I noticed I took Surgical Extraction down to 1 copy from 2 copies on my own sideboard. I feel like most of the decks that it's designed to prey upon, at least here in our local meta, just aren't very prevalent right now.
No, and you get the most value out of Surgical against, I think, decks like Dredge, Storm, and then the Tron Mirror. And, anyway, we'll get into that, right? So that's the list. And as for lands, obviously the 12 Tron lands, Mine, Tower, and Power Plant. I am very conservative with my flex slots in the mana base. I play 5 Forest. Look, you can go for 4. I just think that Field of Ruin is very common. Ghost Quarters is very common. Trophy's very common.
You want your basics to be able to go find.
The Jund matchup has gotten much harder, so I think you have to have a very good reason for running 4. I've seen it done. It's fine. It's just in this current meta, I like 5. I run 1 Ghost Quarter. I switched over from playing Field of Ruin to playing the Ghost Quarter. The format's really fast, so you need to have access to this, especially against decks like
Well, it's interesting, too, that like a card like Assassin's Trophy, one of the reasons I think maybe it hasn't been as successful at killing Tron is just like, it does get your opponent a land, and they're not always hitting a Tron land. Sometimes they're forced to hit
down a land.
Well, that's actually really important that you mentioned that, because sometimes when I'm stirring or I'm looking at the top, those 5 cards that come off of stirring, you actively bottom the forest because you know that they're going to give it to you anyway.
Oh.
So like there's that kind of interplay with, if you know the deck that well, you know what, they're going to have to blow up a land anyway, and if you're banking on them doing that, they'll fix the mana for you.
Yeah.
So sometimes there's that's another reason to play 5.
Right. And if they don't, then you're winning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So kind of good no matter what happens.
Yeah.
And then obviously the one card which should be Sanctum of Ugin.
Don't get greedy.
No. Sanctum of Ugin is fantastic. It's $1.
Pick up the foils now.
It's a one-of. Right?
Before people start learning about this spicy new Tron list.
Yeah. No, and I will say that my Tron list is very conservative. I stick true to what I understand about the archetype.
So it sounds like from the main board, you've got a couple of sections. Of course, you've got your mana base, and you've got your stars and your spheres, enabling you to go find and make Tron. Then you have your payoff once you've actually completed the task of making Tron.
Yeah.
Outside of the main board, moving to the sideboard.
Yeah.
Why don't you tell me a little bit the decisions that you've made and why you've made them?
Yeah.
Good cards to bring in against certain matchups, that kind of thing.
Sure. So with Tron, you have different packages, and I'll explain what each role of the card is supposed to be. So Thought Knot Seer is specifically for the combo matchup. Do you need to get info? You need to know if you have a way to really win and kind of power through this board state that Storm has.
Right, get a peek at their hand and take out the
am I
most
just dead
powerful
here? Or sometimes it's really good for getting rid of it, become immense, right? You don't really board it in against Infect, actually. Just saying that you need the info, so you kind of bring that in the combo matchups.
Yeah,
Spatial Contortion and Warping Whale do come in against the aggro decks, specifically like Humans and Burn. It's a nice interactive play on turn 2 or 3, and
that's why it's just like what do I name? What do I name?
Yeah.
Do I name Spatial Contortion? It's only a 2-of, but they can find it. Do I name up? Oh gosh, flashbacks.
Name Ugin or something instead.
Yeah.
Also a 2-of, more devastating.
Or sometimes the flexibility of Spatial Contortion is that if you don't block the Wormcoil end, then you just give it +3 and you gain 9.
So dumb.
There's some little play with that, right? But usually it's a lightning strike.
Flexibility is good though.
The other thing is, I'll talk a little bit about Warping Whale first. Warping Whale, it has a relevant part to its text that says counter target sorcery. So against things like Hollow One, where they go and they play with a Faithless Looting, you can like, no, I'll counter that. Specifically, if I get to read that.
That hurts against Death Shadow too, doesn't it, Simon?
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Did you keep
Faithless Looting? I only cast it if I want to find my Angler, my Death Shadow. So that I'm drawing dead, empty-handed most likely at that point. Except for like a land Faithless Looting.
I can only imagine if you flash backed that Faithless Looting too and just spent probably all of your mana, 3 mana, and Death Shadow, right?
A lot of other lines with this card involve like countering an opposing scrying or putting a colorless blocker out to ambush and be like, you know what? I'm going to make a 1/1 silent block here. Or, you know what? I don't have Tron online, but I got to get that 6 land. I'm going to cast that and get to that 6 land.
Stirrings is a sorcery. Do you ever counter an opposing Stirrings in the
All
mirror?
the time. All the time. Well, if I have it, right? Yeah. The other thing about these colorless cards is that they're all findable with Ancient Stirrings.
Oh,
So you can find Contortion, you can find Thought Knot Seer, you can find Warping Well. They're all colorless cards. So that's one of the reasons why I dropped Goyf, is because in the current meta, Goyf just wasn't doing enough. I say that, but the card is really good.
And you can't find them.
You can't find them.
It's the Bugler problem in Humans too. You know, you can't find your Mantis Riders or Big Thalias. You know?
Warping Whale also is very good against Living End.
Yeah, I can see that.
Good against Living End. So those kind of it's good as a one-of. I've seen some lists play as many as 2 in the main. And I go, oh man, I really like Warping Whale, because it does exile amoebas. It exiles the blood gas. It has a lot of utility, so it's a good one-of.
I have a question about Warping Whale because I'm the kind of player that can often psych myself into or out of a card because I just think a little too much about the nut draw situations, right? But so Warping Whale seems to me like charm sort of cards. Happens to me all the time. I'm just like, oh man, it would be really great in this situation, but I just sort of fail to see its overall role. So how do you keep yourself from bringing in a Warping Whale in matchups where it's actually pretty low value? Are there some matchups where maybe you always bring it in?
You don't always bring it in. generally better on the play than it is on the draw. Although in the Tron mirror, you just want it. It's better against the aggressive decks, and I do not always bring it in against Hollow One.
Have you ever made a 1/1 Scion
Yeah.
with it? You have?
Yeah.
Achievement unlocked.
Check off one of the bingo squares. Yeah. So again, like, this is really nice to highlight. These cards are findable off of stirrings, and generally post board against certain decks, you're going to become more interactive. So picking up a spatial contortion against humans, you need to unlock your Oblivion Stone or your Ugin. So you're like, well, I'm going to grab this and kill that at the end of the turn or something, right? Then from here we have Nature's Claim. Look, you're never leaving your house without 3 of them, ever. And because so many decks are playing the Sphere, that card on turn 2 or 3 is actually hard for Tron to beat. It is a colorless Blood Moon that also taxes your ability to cantrip, because if I want to play multiple things, like say I want to play a Star and Crack Star, and then I want to do Ancient Stirrings, well, I actually need like 3 mana for that.
Wow.
If I want to be able to play my Sylvan Scrying, I gotta pay 3 for my Sylvan Scrying. So you need to have enough answers, redundant answers, to make sure you can execute your game plan. So I usually do board in between 3 to 4 in certain matchups.
So you're saying that the strength of Damping Sphere is not primarily that it shuts off the ability of your Tron mans to get your Tron lands to get big, but that it actually like chokes your ability to actually go through your deck early in the game.
Yeah, that's huge. I think a lot of players don't realize that, because as the Tron player, it's the taxing part, because so much of what Tron wants to do is 1-drop, 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 that when you make Sylvan Scrying plus 1-drop cost 4, wow, I'm super far behind. I can't develop, and I can't get to 6 mana in time.
Yeah.
Because the correct usage of Sphere against Tron is on turn 2, on turn 3, backed by a clock. Because now you've really taxed them. They go, well, they're not going to have Tron, and they certainly can't get to 4 or 5 lands in time to activate that O-Stone. Well, that's the way that you're supposed to use it. If you're the kind of deck that's playing 1 threat or 2 threats and hoping that that's the way it's never going to work that way.
See, that's the thing about Sphere, though, is like if you want Sphere with the clock, you just run Thalia, right? Little Thalia?
Or you do it out of...
so hard.
Out of Hardened Scales, right?
Yeah, that's brutal, because then they play Welding Jar, and you're just like, oh, here we go.
I always forget, actually, about the bottom part of Damping Sphere, the part that says it costs 1 more for each spell cast before it, or whatnot. I feel like when they designed that card, the top half, lands that would produce more than 1 colorless mana, or whatever, produce just colorless instead. That was for Tron. The bottom part was like 4 Storm.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's interesting that the part that seemingly was like 4 Storm
it also
is actually
taxes-
good against Tron as well.
Yeah, it also taxes KCI. It
Sort of betrays the combo element of Tron.
Yeah.
Right? Like, is that like a lot of these combo decks, they need to do a lot of digging.
Yeah. So I'm in the camp that you need at minimum 3 in your list. I always run 4, because I always want to see that card within the top. I just want to see it.
And you're going to pass it up through stirrings if you ever stir too. So
Yeah,
an extra copy can
Yeah.
actually be really important, I imagine.
Also, in the burn mirror, the burn matchup, this is really important.
Destroying your artifacts
Just
for
game
life game.
4, right?
Yeah. I'm bringing it in against Burn for the same reason.
Yeah.
Because often they'll hold enough cards in hand to like attack, multiple prowess triggers, you're dead no matter what. But being able to gain 4 on top of the stack, and now I don't die, and you're exposed on the crackback, or something like that.
They'll attempt to path your worm coil engine, and you can.
I like to gain 4 over this, please.
And
Thank
create. You still have a life linker and a death toucher. help
Exactly,
too.
yep.
It's so good.
Value. Then we have Thrag Daddy.
The daddy of value.
Listen, Thrag Tusk is just good in this deck. I've seen some list 5.0 that have 3 of them or 2 of them in the main. This card is good against humans.
Yep.
It's good in the mid-range matchups because it's a 2-for-1. It's good against Jace. Oh, I love it when blue-white controls like bounce your Thrag Tusk. Go, sure, I'll make a 3/3.
It's good with Damping Sphere out too.
Yeah, it is, because it actually does provide the 5 power. Really, really important because it trades up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I would say trade up. It matches up well against the threats in the format. It's not really trading up. Like
It's not even really trading if you're getting a 3/3.
yeah,
Right?
yeah, because you're going to get a 3/3 for your work for blocking and stuff. It's also a good clock. If you have 2 of these, that's 10 power.
Yeah.
So there's been matches where you're just like, well, you got nothing. I'm just going to attack you with my 5/3.
And it's a 5-drop too. So like, people worry about Worm Coil, World Breaker, Ballista, Karn, Ugin, Ulamog. 5/3 for 5. Also something you have to worry about.
Yeah.
Besides the cards you're currently running in your sideboard, do you have any flex slots? Cards that you enjoy playing, but you feel just aren't ranked in the current meta?
I mean, Yeah, I like Goyf a lot. I like Goyf because of how much decks are so hyper linear right now. They're so low to the ground. I like what Goyf does out of the sideboard as a blocker.
It's unexpected from Tron. People aren't planning to see a Goyf on turn 3 or on turn 2.
And the cool thing about Goyf is just it easily becomes a 4/5, and it actually does not trade. It blocks Hollow One.
And again, you're just, what's the term? You're increasing the density of threats on the curve, which is, again, not how people think of Tron. People think of Tron as, like, what do I need to answer on their turn 4 or 5, and then I'm home free, when really, like, if you present things like Goyf into Thragtusk, or even Goyf into Ballista, into Thragtusk, into Wormcoil, and like you build up, it seems like it's really hard to overcome that sort of pressure.
It is, and the reason I 5-0'd that list, and I was having success with that, was like I played against Blue-White Control, like I said before. I think they blew up all my lands. I was like, okay, well here's this 3/4. That thing did like 12 damage, and that game ended with me top decking the one Walking Ballista that I kept in my deck, and I was like, well, here's my Ballista for like 8. Or it was I paid 8 mana, but it was total of like it was a 4/4 Ballista. Right? I was like,
right.
You're at 2. Can you answer?
Does it resolve?
Yeah, because usually like what happens is that in those matchups, like Wormcoil Engine is actively bad because it's just gonna path it. You get no value off of it.
Right.
Whereas now if they're pathing your 2-drop.
The Wormcoil's suddenly online.
Yeah, and now they're like, wait a second, now that's a 6. Oh boy, now what do I do? So yeah, that's one of the cards that I really like in the list. That if the meta were to shift, and it is shifting again, I'd probably look at it again.
What are the slots that you view of as like flexible from this sideboard to take out for them?
Okay, so like I said, I'm very conservative with my lists, but I can see shaving a Nature's Claim. Let's go down to 3 Nature's Claim. Surgical may or may not be correct right now. I have an affinity for it because I don't like losing to Valakut, and the Tron Mirror is atrocious. So.
It does fight with Goyf a little bit in terms of game plan.
Yeah, so these two can maybe become like a Grafdigger's Cage or so. And Warping Whale, it's a good card, but I can see it becoming something like another Relic. It could be another Contortion. It could be a Crucible of Worlds.
But the stuff you're not touching is 3 Thought Knot, 3 Nature's Claim, 2 Contortion, 3 Thragtusk.
Yeah, mainly because Thought Knot, you really need it against the Phoenix decks. You'd be surprised how sometimes the Phoenix decks just don't actually get a way to put the Phoenix in the yard, so it gets stranded in the hand, and you Thought Knot them, you take it away. You go, all right, at least I don't have to do with this recursive 3/2. It's gone forever. Thought Knot it hits a lot of the points where Tron is weak. And sadly, as much as I want Goyf is a very different plan.
Right.
Thought Knot is a mini disruption plan, which works out well.
Goyf seems like a green-black X plan.
But in metas where they're like assassins trophying all your stuff, and with the way that Jund has evolved, Jund has become a very strong deck. I think it's very underplayed. I like how it clocks. I like how it uses Assassin's Trophy proactively in a match where, like, I don't care if I give you the land. Here's my 4/5, and here's my Bloodbreaker Elf, and here's my Bolt. I'm going to kill you.
Right.
So in those matchups, I found myself wanting Goyf. I go, oh man, this Goyf would be awesome here, right? So,
anyways, Giovanni, I'd like to ask you about matchups. What do you like to see on the other side of the table when your opponent sets down that first land? What do you go? Oh yeah, this is a good one. This is a good matchup.
That's such a uniquely modern thing.
Yeah.
So I like to see a Overgrown Tomb and a Temple Garden. Generally, those indicate to me mid-range decks and fair matchups. I'm pretty cool with seeing those. Those are pretty favorable. Like green-black mid-range is a favorable matchup. Don't let anybody really tell you otherwise. It's very favorable. The green-white decks are favorable.
Creature-based.
The creature, as much as somebody will say, well, we have 4 Ghost Quarters, we have all this. You can Ghost Quarter me all you want. I got 5 basic forest. I will get to my game plan, and you will have to find a way to dodge the Oblivion Stone, the Ugins, and the other, Wormcoil Engine package. So I like my matchups against those decks. Really, what you don't want to see is a Spire Bluff Canal.
Yeah.
Oh, well, you're either Storm, or you're playing something like Blue Moon, which is a very favorable matchup, or you're playing against Through the Breach, and that is not fun. Through the Breach is not fun.
counterspells and combo that's too fast, essentially.
Like, what is it? Worldspine Worm? Is that the name of the card?
like
Reanimator or like Grisham?
No, because like they'll put it into play, and then when it gets sacrificed and leaves play, it makes a bunch of 5/5s.
Yeah.
Where does this deck come
Grisham
from?
Grisham, yeah, but like
okay.
the one Blue Moon through the Breach deck was also playing something like this kind of package. I was like, we're just dead. We just can't beat this. Grisham again. Basically, like, when it comes to things that I want to see, lands that I want to see on the opening turn, I like to see, black green, and I want to see blue white, green white.
Right, lands that indicate creature-based matchups.
Yes.
So you like to see the green-black matchup. What do you think about Assassin's Trophy? How can green-black still be a good matchup, even though they've got Assassin's Trophy?
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody on the stream on the podcast listens to any of the Hooglin stuff, but Hooglin will say green-black has gotten a tool, right? But decks like Tron are redundant in what they do. So you can blow up a land on turn 2 and you've taken turn 2 off. Then you need to be able to do like an Inquisition or Thoughtseize, take out a Scrying or a map. Then on turn 2 you're going to blow up another land, hopefully blow up a land and maybe get them to only have 2 forests in hand. That's the ideal scenario. But Tron just fetches it will find its lands at some point, and you will need to clock them. And I feel like the clock in green black isn't fast enough all the time. Sure, there'll be moments when they do have Goyf into Lily into Trophy into this, and all right, okay, well, I'm going to lose this particular game 1. But I've always found them to be pretty favorable, even without Tarmogoyf in my sideboard. Yeah, but yeah.
It sounds like the good matchups are ones where they have to develop a board and aim towards the late game. If you make it to the late game, you're probably going to be doing okay.
Yeah.
And the poor matchups, just in general, are the ones that exploit the fact that you're not really doing much turns 1, 2, and 3. And could even potentially kill you by turn 3.
Mm-hmm. Value-based, like slow to start late game, like green-white, creatures.
Right. Knight of the Reliquary.
Yeah, Knight of the Reliquary.
It's
like,
not
good.
Hilarious.
You have to establish the lock with that deck. And I played against it at regionals, I believe it was round 4, and my opponent in game 1 ghost quartered me 4 times. I still won.
If they were all in the first 4 turns, maybe that's good. But that's the thing about Reliquary. Yeah, exactly. It's like once you get online with Reliquary, you've already passed the threshold of when fetching ghost quarters is relevant in the matchup. It's like you're now in this part of the matchup where you are desperately looking for an end game.
Yes, and that's the thing. Like if one good deck that does come to mind that is a very interactive matchup, much to a lot of people say that Tron's not interactive, Hardened Scales. That matchup is, Tom, that's down your alley, right? Like, I think that matchup is really fun to play. As a Tron player, I like playing against it because there's a lot of play there. First off, Ugin's dead. Ugin's dead. How early do I have the O-Stone?
Yes, I agree with that.
Okay. And then how quickly can I remove or bait you into putting counters on your Ink Moth Nexus so I can fetch the Ghost Quarter and kill it?
Right.
Ooh, spicy.
Yeah.
Right. That's really what that game plan kind of hedges around. Because
you're just trying to herd their counters onto a killable source.
Yes.
I feel like new Hardened Scales players are going to naturally stumble in those sorts of situations.
Yeah.
And experienced veteran Hardened Scales players, if we can even say that about the deck, given its lifespan, but there definitely are
quite a few. Quite a few.
Those are the people that you need to watch out for, because even though there are a lot of decision points in the deck, that's even more opportunity to mess up, right?
It's true.
Yeah.
It's 10 different junctions, and you have to make the right choice at each and every one. One misstep, one misturn, and you've lost, essentially.
Okay, well, Giovanni, thank you for covering a little bit of your favorite, your least favorite matchups and fun matchups.
Yeah.
And Morgan's going to take it away with probably one of the most important aspects of the deck, mulligan decisions, things like that.
So we know a lot about the deck now, and we're familiar with the list and the matchups. I'm curious to get more into the in-depth small things that really make up just such a huge part of Modern. How do you mulligan on the play, on the draw? How do you identify the matchups? And so that's one of my first questions is in the dark, in game 1, what are the best opening hands with Tron? And what are some of the scary opening hands with Tron that you need to mull away? How do you make that decision?
Okay. You really can't afford in Modern to fall behind so much that you don't have Tron till turn 5. Usually you're dead by
So
then.
if I find a hand that's like Forest, Sanctum, like Star, Sphere, Stirrings, that's not a hand for me.
To 6. That is just gone.
Okay.
Equally, if you have a hand that is 2 Tron pieces like Tower and Mine and a bunch of payoffs, you can't keep that.
Oh.
You can't keep that because now you're playing the roulette of, am I going to draw a cantrip?
Am I natural Troning or natural Stirrings?
Yeah. It's very scary to keep that.
Well, you can't even Stirrings with that hand if you top deck it, can you?
No, and I did that. That was a huge mistake. I was really tired. The semifinals, the PPTQ at Mages against the player that won was on Grixis Death Shadow, and he punished me. He punished me because I was tired, and I was like, I literally got to the point where I think I'm going to draw it, and I didn't. I got greedy, and I lost. Yeah.
So one of the things, like when you were teaching me about Tron, when we were doing a lot of testing for the SCG team, that really sort of helped me open my eyes to the innate strength of Tron, had to do with, like what you're describing, how sort of simple it is to churn through the cards in your deck. The fact that it is a 40-card deck. Can you recall, sort of how you described to me, like the power of Stirrings and the number of cards that you saw?
So assume that your opening flop of 7 has Star, Stirrings, 2 Tron pieces, and like 1 or 2 payoffs or something, right?
Okay, pretty good hand.
7 cards. You're on the draw. And you play your first land, you play the Star. Turn 2, you crack the Star. After your draw step, you've gone to 8, 9 cards. And then you crack this and then you Stirrings. And then you've looked at the top 14 cards.
15 in this, on the draw, right? Because you get the draw from Chromatic, and that brings you up to 10. And then you get the 5 look from Stirrings, which is 15.
Yeah. That's insane.
Now, if I'm a humans player, and I'm on the play right in this situation, I've seen 7 cards pass. My second turn, I've seen 8 cards.
Yeah.
and you're over here with 2 opening hands.
Yeah. That is so powerful in so many ways. It gives you so much flexibility with the kind of hand you can keep, even though the rules are really much set in stone. But if you're looking for a payoff, and you need to find something out of your toolbox, you go, I really need this O-Stone right now. Let's take this.
As a humans player, when I mulligan to 6 because I don't see a 1-drop in my 7, and God forbid, I mulligan to 5.
Yeah.
I'm living in the first 2 turns on still just the top 7 cards, and what you're saying is what's sort of hidden underneath is that, even when you mull, and what it means to mull better, or to mulligan good, is that you still have, with these specific pieces, which are obviously very redundant, you still have access to way more cards than you would even with an opening 7 that didn't mull on a deck without this sort of air.
I really think the only other deck in the format that can see more cards is Serum Powder Eldrazi, which can see equivalent to 14 cards turn 1 if it decides to mulligan.
Right. Turn 0, really.
Turn 0.
Before the game even begins.
You're right.
But they don't get the same amount of selection, right? It's just sort of a pile that they've exiled.
They get the Eternal Surges out there.
Sure.
I'd like to add something. So the other thing is, say you're at a GP or something, totally unknown field. You as a humans player, when you're mulliganing, you're just trying to find a good humans hand.
An aggressive hand or an interactive hand or a mix. It's hard in the dark.
Meanwhile, the Tron player is they get to see what their opponent is doing by the time that turn 2, seeing 14 cards play has happened. They have more information than you did seeing these more cards.
Right, because now I'm thinking, if I have a Meddling Mage, Fimmage, Reflector Mage hand, there's a lot of, matchups where that's a straight up bad hand. Tron being one of them, actually.
Right.
But I see what you're saying is that they don't only get 2 opening hands, they get the time to make a decision about what cards they will need.
Which is even better than the Serum Powder Eldrazi version. They still don't have that. They're still on their turn 0, mulliganing away. They don't know what their opponent is playing yet. Tron has that benefit.
Yeah, you're right. And I think... when it comes down to the mulliganing decisions like we're talking about, that little description that I gave you and you guys now see, on the play it's 14, on the draw it's 15. That's a lot of flexibility you get just in your opening hand. And if you need the mulligan, you're still looking at 14 or 13 cards based on player draw.
Right.
So one of the things that makes Tron so consistent is its ability to find the 12 Urza lands.
Well, and I think that sort of gets to the frustration that a lot of people have, and sort of like the root of the meme that is Tron, because when you sit down as a player against something like Tron and you're doing, you know, whatever your game plan is, and you run into this Tron monster, a lot of times, you know, across the table, it can just feel like the Tron player is luck sacking. It can just feel like the Tron player is dropping, you know, Tron landed to Tron landed to Tron land into exactly the right card against you, into you lose, and it feels like they have not had to exert much effort or thought. But like the more you think about, you know, the texture of building that hand and the information and the decision points that a Tron player has, it becomes a much different picture where, you know, it's not, you know, Tron land into Karn that you know, gives this deck its power. It's the fact that it is so redundant, and it gives a good, smart player who has the ability to read the matchup and read the important cards in a matchup so much information combined with the selection that makes it just seem like you know, a totally uphill battle to a lot of new players. So like, are there some like small things about the deck that a newcomer might overlook? You know, like, are there some cards that are more complicated to play with than you might think? You know, I'm like, just to mention one that jumps to mind, like, you know, like what's the importance of World Breaker? What's the importance of Relic? What are some little tips that you can give to these new players about overlooked lines?
I guess the first tip I'll give to anybody trying to pick up the deck is learn to mulligan. Learn to identify what hands are functional and what hands are not functionable. You can definitely function on 5 cards and still win the game. That's the benefit of playing Tron, right? I'm not a mathematician, and I don't know, I haven't done the calculations for it, but the consistency of Tron is something you have to take into consideration in your opening hands.
Sure.
So cards that are actually, you know, Karn on 3, you have a decision point to make, and I hope you know your matchup, because if you minus in the burn matchup to remove a, let's say, a Swift Spear, chances are it's going to get bolted. That might be a good exchange for you, because that bolt would have gone towards you, and you're
life gain and
it's life gain, right?
Yeah.
In the mid-range matchups, right? Plus, get a card from their hand. Now it goes to 10. Now this becomes a massive problem for the opponent, right? So learn to know.
It goes to 10 immediately.
Yeah, it does go.
Plus 4?
Yeah.
See, I never know that because as a humans player, they never plus.
Yeah. So know how to use the meme Karn, as they say, but learn to understand his role in different matchups.
So, Relic of Progenitus is one that always daunts me as someone who plays linear aggro decks. You know, it's like, man, look at all these decisions on this seemingly innocuous card. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about because I've seen Tron players just with 3 relics on board, dismantling their opponents with these 3 stupid little tombstones. Yeah, and I'm just like, how do you weird flex, but okay, you know, how do you learn to maximize small value engines like that?
All right, man. So with Relic of Progenitus, the rise of the graveyard decks and the graveyard strategies are just, you need a way in the main deck to interact with that. I guess the best example of why Relic is good is, Living End is touted at being a sort of very not so great matchup for Tron. Man, but with 3 relics in the main, you land 2, you machine gun down their graveyard.
You get to sculpt their battlefield eventually after they go off.
Yeah, and I've had matches on Moto, and I've never lost to Living End on Moto, and against good players who have full 5-0'd. I just machine gun away their stuff. And I forced them into a position to where, this Living End is not going to be good for you. You're going to get 1 or 2 creatures. And you know what? I still have the ability to cast a Wormcoil and pop my Relic and exile your graveyard. The other part of it is it draws you a card.
I was going to say, it looks a lot like Chromatic Sphere and Chromatic Star.
Yeah.
It's, except it doesn't give you the mana, but it gives you that extra utility.
This goes to highlight again, whereas this is targeted graveyard hate, it also adds to the part of the deck that cantrips.
Right? I'm wondering if you are in a meta where you determined Walking Ballista to be the more important card.
Yeah.
Is Relic that flex slot? Is that what shifts when you go to 3 ballistas? You go to 2 relics, or
So the flex slots are, yes, you can shave a Relic, you can shave a World Breaker. We have to talk about World Breaker, and it'll take about 20 seconds. You can shave an O-Stone, or you can, I'm not a fan of this, you can shave a Karn. Whatever.
Sure, those are sort of the flex slots in general.
But I think
it's just Relic strikes me as one of those cards that a new player is going to see, and it's just going to feel so So like,
so like, should be a worm coil engine,
right?
That's what they're thinking,
right? Where my big
Timmy player, you know.
Yeah.
But like, it seems like one of those cards is really easy to overlook the value.
Well, the other part of Relic is that it combos with O-Stone. So you activate the Relic, and then with that on the stack, you activate the O-Stone. The O-Stone wipes the board, the Relic resolves, and you exile their graveyard. And you draw a card.
Oh, wow. So you wipe the things and then exile the things that you've wiped, and you still get your cantrip.
Yeah.
Well, so we've talked about good and bad matchups, favorite cards, and their particular uses. So what environment do you think Tron thrives in the best? I guess by that I mean, what other decks do you want to see at the top of the lists in the meta that would make Tron worth playing?
All right, so maybe you guys won't like my answer, but I'm going to say that because Tron is so powerful at its core, on a scale of 1 to 10, it will always rank like a 6.5 to 7. It is never a poor choice. It's only, if you really want to metagame against certain decks, you'll play a deck that has like the combo Silver Bullet, which be Infect, right? You know?
Right.
Tron will just have these hands where they go, you know, turn 3 Karn into Ulamog. Can you beat that? I'm asking you the question. Can you beat this? Because if you can, you deserve the win.
Right.
That you know, like, that curve is
and
so...
if you can't, you might still deserve to win.
Yeah.
But you're not going to.
You're not going to. Right? So, what metagame is this not a good choice? I would say if it's heavy combo, super heavy combo, like we have Storm, tons of KCI, tons of Infect, or, you know, ad nauseum is... You just looked at Grishelbrand. You know, those 5 decks that I just named. If the meta ever gets to be like that, you just can't play Tron. This is not a good chance. Then you pivot to playing something like Green White Tron or Green Black Tron. You go like, I need access to Thought Seizes, I need some disruption, and I need Leyline of the Void. Right?
Well, that's the thing, though. Is you're not even saying Tron is dead in these metas. You're saying specifically mono green Tron. So there is play to the 75.
Yeah, and right now the trend is to play green white Tron. I played against the deck on Moto. I played it at regionals, and you know it does lack a little bit more punch and power, but you're making up for that and having haymaker cards like Rest in Peace.
Right. So absolutely devastating to certain archetypes.
Yeah, so specifically to your hardened scales.
Yeah. No modular trigger, no Hangerback Walker tokens.
Yeah.
If nothing can touch the graveyard, it's like, I don't think that hardened scales is a graveyard deck, but man, put Rest in Peace or Leyline of the Void, it's like, I guess I am a graveyard deck. That hurts really bad.
Well, I mean, the other aspect is that because blue-white has come down, mono-green Tron gets better. Because the amount of Field of Ruins being played are much less right now. So that gives the consistency of the mono-green build. The mono-green build is known as the most consistent version because of how quickly it can amass what it needs to. Right. From there, if there's a very creature or aggro-centric meta, you'll play the red-green version with Kozilek's Return to the Main. Right, I see. If it's a very combo-centric meta, you can pivot towards the green-black version.
I mean, honestly, it seems like mono-green Tron still has a pretty okay matchup against creature aggro.
It does. Yeah. It does.
But I guess like burn aggro sort of like styles of deck might be a little bit different.
So if your local meta is just full of combo decks, it's not a good day to play Tron.
Yeah. It's not. I wouldn't recommend that you can pivot to playing something like green-black, but you know, I would say. At that point, play Burn.
But if everyone at your LGS is playing like Knight of the Reliquary, Wild Nacatl, creature-based kind of fair decks, that is the place and time to bring Tron to the shop.
Humans too. A lot of people don't like think of that matchup as being great, but
yeah, I think if your meta is like Grixis Death Shadow, Humans, Green Black mid-range, Spirits is actually blue-white Spirits is not favored against Tron. I think that's a really Tron eats that matchup alive. Banned Spirits, we haven't talked about that. That matchup is really close, but I think it favors... I'm in the camp that it favors mono-green Tron.
Gotcha.
What makes that matchup close?
Probably Coco.
Coco is big. Reflector Mage, it might not be a removal spell. The tempo advantage is huge. But you land Ugin, and, you know, things get dicey.
That's true. That's one thing that Humans doesn't have that Bant has is Coco. Is like straight up 2 things on the board, deal with it. You know, that's big off of a Noble on turn 3.
Yeah, at your end step, playing around Karn or whatever.
But you know, the only time you ever have to pivot from the deck is when really you just kind of go, okay, well, we're obsolete now, so we can't really play this anymore. But man, if your deck if you're putting up results and you feel like you know your deck list in and out, it is modern. That will help.
And you know, and that's listeners. That's what we're trying to bring you with this segment. This is something that we're going to do, about once every month on the podcast. And, we just want to bring you a lot of the information that you only get about a deck by playing it over and over and over again and learning and having experience in the field. Even though there is no substitute for that sort of practice, we want to be able to get at some of those nuggets of information for anyone who is trying to branch out or even just trying to understand their own matchup against something like Tron. If you can understand how the Tron player thinks and how a good Tron player operates, that's a lot of edge too. So I just wanted to thank our guest, Giovanni Mera, for being with us again.
Thanks for having me, man. It was really fun.
Oh, yeah, it was a pleasure. Learned a lot. If you want to contact Giovanni, you can reach him on Twitter. His handle is RacerZen or RacerXen.
RacerXen. That also happens to be my MTGO name.
That's his MTGO name as well. So that's RACER XEN.
Yep.
Okay, so
Hit me up on there.
You can reach him on Twitter with that handle. You can, if you're playing MTGO and you see that, you can know who it is, who the pretty face is sitting behind that monitor. And.
Mulligan with Tron in mind. That's it for game one.
So you can keep a no lander just to mess with him a little bit.
Main deck surgical. What?
Now, we will have all the links in the description below if you so choose to contact any of your hosts or our guest, Giovanni.
Absolutely. And if you want to pick up any of the cards for this deck, you can, of course, check out the Pat's Games direct shipping link that will be in the description for some of the best prices on these cards that you'll find anywhere online. Well, that about wraps it up for the interview. Just wanted to give a big thank you to Giovanni again for being with us here. Thanks, Gio.
Thanks for having me, man.
Oh, of course. And so next we're just going to jump into a little bit of discussion about the Ultimate Masters spoilers that were spoiled today. Now, for all you listeners out there who want an in-depth breakdown, next week's podcast will be focusing on the spoilers when we've gotten even more of them. But for this week, we just wanted to do a brief little touch on the spoilers that we have and, sort of see if there's anything interesting to learn. So, Tom, why don't you take us through it?
So, I think one of the more interesting facts that has come to light this week with these new spoilers, there are going to be rares that were not included in the box toppers. So, having found out that there's going to be more rares than were spoiled in the box toppers means that there are, in fact, going to be white rares. If you guys watched the first episode of the podcast, there were no white spoilers from the box toppers. So it's a relief to know that it's going to be more well-rounded than it seemed at first.
Absolutely.
There's a few interesting pauper cards that have been shifted perhaps from common down to the common slot.
I'd just like to take a second to point out a couple really cool new reprints. Gurmag Angler and Faithless Looting just got reprinted, so it's really likely that you'll be able to get some cheaper foils for your Pauper deck, or Modern deck for that matter. I was looking in the Pauper subreddit, and saw a lot of people were really excited about Fire and Ice for their Is It Pauper decks as well. So that's something to look forward to for Pauper and UMA.
Pretty popular color combo in Pauper, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Popular.
That's why you come here, folks.
The real 1%ers.
Well, very exciting stuff. Like I said, just a quick little touch on those spoilers, because next week we're going to have a full breakdown coming for you with all that's there in the lead up to its release on December 7th. And that's been it for today's Tapped In Podcast, episode 2. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can find us here on YouTube, on the MTG Tournament Grinder channel. You can find us on SoundCloud at Tapped In Podcast. You can tweet at us as well at Tapped In Podcast as well. And go ahead and tweet any questions of the week that you want answered by us, by either me or Tom or Simon. Or anything that you want to see us do or talk about. Absolutely open to that sort of suggestion. I've been Morgan.
And I've been Thomas.
And I've been Simon.
And I'm Giovanni.
And that's Tapped In.
As usual, if you guys enjoy content like this, you can let me know in the comments below or by hitting that subscribe button. So until next time, I'll see you guys later.